The wagon wheels groaned to a halt in front of the Tahlequah, Oklahoma trading post on a scorching August afternoon in 1883. And when the canvas flap pulled back, Quinn Garrett saw a woman step down wearing nothing but a faded calico dress, so worn the pattern had nearly disappeared. Yet she carried herself like royalty descending from a golden carriage. He had been shoeing a mare outside the blacksmith shop when the wagon arrived, and now his hammer hung loose in his grip as he watched her survey the dusty street with eyes the color of creek water after spring rain. Her auburn hair had been pinned up hastily, strands escaping in the heat, and her face held that particular expression of determined hope he had seen on settlers before, the ones who had lost everything but refused to lose themselves. The wagon driver, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained whiskers, tossed down a single carpetbag so small it could not possibly contain more than a change of undergarments. "This is far as I go, miss. Tahlequah, just like you paid for." She nodded, pressing a few coins into his weathered palm. "Thank you for the passage." Quinn watched the exchange with growing curiosity. Most women arriving in the Cherokee Nation came with families, with wagons full of household goods, with husbands or fathers or brothers. This woman came alone with one dress and a bag that looked lighter than his saddlebags. She could not have been more than 23 or 24, though hardship had etched faint lines around her eyes that spoke of trials beyond her years. The wagon pulled away in a cloud of red Oklahoma dust, and the woman stood there in the middle of the street looking at the buildings, as if trying to decide which one might hold her future. Quinn found himself setting down his hammer and wiping his hands on his leather apron. His boots carried him toward her before his mind fully approved the decision. "Afternoon, miss," he said, pulling off his hat. Up close, he could see the dress was not just worn but carefully mended in a dozen places, the stitches small and precise. "You look like you might be needing some direction." She turned those creek water eyes on him, and he felt something shift in his chest like a horse finding its footing after a stumble. "I am looking for the boarding house. I was told there was one run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson." "There is," Quinn said. "But Mrs. Patterson passed 2 months back. Her daughter runs it now, and she is particular about who she takes in." He did not add that Martha Patterson was particular because she had to be, a young widow herself with 2 children and a business to protect. The woman's shoulders sagged just slightly, a momentary crack in her composed facade. "I see. Is there another establishment that takes boarders?" Quinn thought of the saloon with its upstairs rooms and the kind of women who occupied them. He thought of the rough camp on the edge of town where the railroad workers stayed in tents. Neither was a place for a woman traveling alone, especially not one who looked at the world with that peculiar mixture of hope and wariness. "The church sometimes helps folks in need," he offered. "Reverend Michaels and his wife have been known to take in travelers." She stiffened at that, pride flashing across her features. "I am not looking for charity. I have skills. I can work. I simply need a place to stay while I establish myself." Quinn studied her mended dress, her worn boots, the way she held that nearly empty carpetbag like it contained treasures. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "I can sew. I can keep books. I can cook and clean and tend a garden. I can read and write, and I have a fair hand for correspondence." She lifted her chin. "I am not afraid of honest work." An idea formed in Quinn's mind, half foolish and half inspired. His ranch house sat 3 miles outside town, a sprawling structure his father had built before dying of fever 5 years back. Quinn had been managing alone since then, eating his own terrible cooking and watching the place fall into a state of bachelor disrepair that would have horrified his mother. He needed help, had needed it for years, but hiring a housekeeper in Tahlequah meant navigating the complex social webs of the Cherokee families and the white settlers, finding someone acceptable to both communities in a place where Quinn himself straddled that line. His mother had been Cherokee, his father a Scots-Irish rancher who had married for love and been accepted into the nation through his wife's family. Quinn inherited his father's height and his mother's dark hair, his father's green eyes and his mother's high cheekbones. He belonged everywhere and nowhere, accepted by most but truly fitting with none. "I might know of a situation," he heard himself say. "I run a horse ranch outside town. I need someone to manage the house, do the cooking and such. There is a separate room, proper and respectable. Pay would be fair, and you would have your meals included." She looked at him with sharp intelligence, weighing his words for ulterior motives. "You are offering me employment at a ranch where you live alone. You understand how that would appear." "I understand how it looks," Quinn said honestly. "But I also understand you just arrived with one dress and nowhere to go. I am offering honest work for honest pay. You can ask anyone in town about me, Quinn Garrett. My family has been in these parts for 30 years. I run horses, not a house of ill repute." A smile ghosted across her lips, so brief he almost missed it. "You are very direct, Mr. Garrett. Life is too short for dancing around the truth," he said. "What is your name?" "Rose Ashford." She extended her hand, and when he shook it, he felt calluses that confirmed her claims about not being afraid of work. "I came from Kansas. I was keeping house for my uncle, but he passed last month. His son inherited the farm and brought his own family to run it. There was no place for me anymore." The story was common enough in these times. Women left adrift when the men who provided for them died or moved on. Rose Ashford was one of thousands who had to remake themselves in the territories, who came west because there was nowhere else to go. "I am sorry for your loss," Quinn said. "But if you are looking to start fresh, Tahlequah is not a bad place for it. We have got Cherokee and white folk, Creek and settlers, all trying to make something work together. It is messy sometimes, but it is honest." Rose looked down the street at the mix of buildings, traditional Cherokee homes alongside American-style storefronts, women in both ribbon shirts and calico dresses moving through the afternoon heat. "It seems a unique place." "That it is." Quinn gestured toward the trading post. "How about this? Come get a meal at the restaurant yonder. You can ask the folks there about me. If you decide I am trustworthy, I will take you out to the ranch and show you the situation. If you do not like it, I will pay for a room at the boarding house for tonight and you can figure your next step. Fair?" She considered this, her expression carefully neutral. Then she nodded. "That seems reasonable." The restaurant was run by a Cherokee woman named Ayanna and her husband Thomas, and they served food that mixed traditional dishes with American fare. Quinn led Rose to a corner table and ordered them both plates of beef and cornbread, while half the establishment tried not to stare at the newcomer. Ayanna brought the food herself, her dark eyes bright with curiosity. "Quinn Garrett, are you going to introduce me to your companion?" "Ayanna, this is Miss Rose Ashford, just arrived from Kansas. Miss Ashford, this is Ayanna Thompson, who makes the best cornbread in the Cherokee Nation." Rose smiled with genuine warmth. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Thompson." "Kansas," Ayanna said thoughtfully. "Long journey." "Are you planning to stay in Tahlequah?" "I hope to," Rose said. "Mr. Garrett mentioned he might have employment available." Ayanna's eyebrows rose slightly, and she gave Quinn a look that promised a thorough interrogation later. "Did he now?" "Well, Quinn is a good man, for all that he lives out there alone like a hermit. His mother was my mother's cousin. He comes from good people." The endorsement was clearly meant to reassure Rose, and Quinn saw some of the tension leave her shoulders. They ate their meal while Ayanna made a point of stopping by twice more to chat, each time dropping small stories about Quinn's character, about his reputation for fair dealing and his tendency to help neighbors without being asked. By the time they finished eating, the sun had started its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Quinn paid for the meal and led Rose to where his horse waited outside the blacksmith shop. "I will need to saddle another mount," he said. "Unless you want to wait until tomorrow, I can ride," Rose said. "If you have a horse that is gentle enough." Quinn saddled a bay mare with an easy temperament and helped Rose mount. She settled into the saddle with reasonable competence, arranging her worn dress as modestly as possible. They rode out of Tahlequah as the evening air began to cool, following the trail that led northwest through rolling hills covered in prairie grass and scattered oak trees. The ranch appeared as they crested a rise. Buildings clustered in a small valley with a creek running along the eastern boundary. The main house was built of stone and timber, a solid structure that spoke of permanence. The barn and corrals spread out behind it, and Quinn could see his horses grazing in the far pasture, their coats gleaming in the fading light. "It is beautiful," Rose said softly. "I did not expect something so established." "My father built most of it before I was born," Quinn said. "He and my mother worked this land for 25 years before the fever took them both. I have been trying to keep it going since." He dismounted and helped Rose down, then led her toward the house. Inside, the evening shadows revealed exactly what he had warned about. The main room was cluttered with tack that should have been in the barn, papers and books stacked on every surface. The kitchen held a pile of dishes he had been meaning to wash for 3 days. Dust covered the furniture, and the whole place had that particular smell of a home lived in by someone who never quite cleaned properly. Rose walked through slowly, her expression unreadable. She ran a finger along the mantelpiece, examining the dust. She looked into the kitchen and the state of the dishes. She peered into the side room that had been his mother's sewing room, now piled with boxes and miscellaneous items. "You are not exaggerating about needing help," she finally said. Quinn felt his face heat. "I keep meaning to sort it out. But between the horses and the fence repairs and everything else, the house always comes last." Rose turned to look at him, and something in her expression had softened. "You said there was a separate room upstairs, 2 bedrooms up there." "I use one, the other has been shut since my mother passed. It has a proper bed and a chest of drawers. The door has a lock." She climbed the stairs and examined the room, testing the bed, checking the window. When she came back down, she looked at him squarely. "What exactly would my duties be, Mr. Garrett? Keep the house clean. Do the cooking. Handle the washing and mending. Maybe help with the garden if you are inclined. I would pay you $30 a month plus room and board." It was a generous wage, and he saw her eyes widen slightly at the figure. "That is very fair," she said carefully, "but I need to know your expectations are strictly for housekeeping." Quinn met her gaze directly. "Miss Ashford, I am not going to lie and say I do not notice you are an attractive woman. But I am looking for a housekeeper, not a wife or a mistress. Your room has a lock. I give you my word as a Christian and a horseman that I will not cross any lines that should not be crossed." Rose studied him for a long moment, and Quinn had the sense she was reading him the way he read horses, looking for signs of dishonesty or ill intent. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "I would like to accept your offer, Mr. Garrett." "When would you like me to start?" "Tomorrow soon enough. We can ride back to town in the morning and collect anything else you need. I imagine that carpet bag does not contain much." A shadow crossed her face. "No, it does not. Everything I owned fit in that bag with room to spare." The words carried weight, hinting at a story larger than just an uncle dying and a cousin taking over a farm. But Quinn did not press. Everyone who came west carried stories they preferred to leave behind. "Then we will get you what you need," he said. "There is a general store in town. You can pick out some practical clothes and whatever supplies you want for the house." "Mr. Garrett, I cannot afford. It is an advance on your wages," he interrupted. "Consider it part of the employment. I need you to have what you need to do the work properly." She looked like she wanted to argue, pride warring with practicality in her expression. Practicality won. "Thank you. That is very generous." They spent the rest of the evening in careful courtesy, Quinn showing her where things were kept while Rose took mental inventory of what needed doing. He made a simple dinner of fried eggs and bread, apologizing for the meager fare. Rose ate without complaint, though he noticed her glancing at the kitchen with the expression of someone already planning improvements. As darkness fell complete, Quinn lit the lamps and showed Rose how to bar the doors. "I will be up before dawn," he said, "but you can sleep as long as you need. Tomorrow will be soon enough to start." Rose climbed the stairs to her new room, and Quinn heard the sound of the lock clicking into place. He did not blame her for being cautious. She was alone in a strange place with a man she had met only hours ago. Trust would have to be earned gradually, through actions rather than words. Quinn lay in his own bed that night listening to the familiar creaks and settling sounds of the house, now joined by the soft footsteps of another person moving around upstairs. It felt strange having someone else here after so many years alone. Strange, but not unwelcome. He thought of Rose in her worn dress with her careful dignity, the way she had lifted her chin when declaring she was not afraid of honest work. "You could wear rags and still outshine the stars," he had thought when first seeing her step down from that wagon. The words had come unbidden, startling him with their poeticism. Quinn was not a poetic man as a rule. He dealt in practical things, horses and hay, water and fence lines. But something about Rose Ashford had stirred an unfamiliar feeling in his chest, a sense of possibility he had not felt since before his parents died. He told himself firmly not to read too much into it. She was his employee, nothing more. He had hired her to clean his house and cook his meals, not to fill the empty spaces that had grown in his life. Whatever that spark had been when their eyes met, he would need to ignore it for the sake of propriety and her comfort. But as sleep finally claimed him, Quinn's last thought was of creek water eyes and auburn hair catching the sunlight, and the ghost of a smile that had crossed Rose's face when she thought he was not looking. Morning came with the rooster's crow and pale light filtering through Quinn's curtains. He dressed quickly and headed downstairs, surprised to find Rose already in the kitchen. She had changed into the same dress, but her hair was freshly pinned, and she had clearly made an effort to wash at the basin. She looked up as he entered, a question in her expression. "I found some flour and lard. May I make biscuits?" "Please do. I am a terrible cook." Quinn grabbed his hat. "I need to feed the horses. Will take me about an hour." When he returned, the kitchen smelled like heaven. Fresh biscuits sat on a clean plate alongside fried bacon and eggs. The dishes from last night were washed and stacked. The table had been cleared and wiped down. In 1 hour, Rose had created more order than Quinn managed in a month. They ate together, Rose quiet but watchful. Quinn found himself talking to fill the silence, telling her about the ranch, about the horses he bred and trained, about the clients who came from as far as Texas and Kansas to buy his stock. "Your father must have been an excellent horseman," Rose said, "to build such a reputation." "He was. And my mother had the Cherokee knowledge of horses, the understanding that goes deeper than just training. She could look at a horse and know its spirit. Quinn smiled at the memory. She used to say a horse judges a person's heart. You cannot fool them with pretty words. That sounds like wisdom. Rose dabbed her mouth with a cloth napkin she must have found and washed. Do you share that gift? Some of it, maybe. I try to treat them right, listen to what they are telling me. Seems to work well enough. They cleaned up together. An awkward dance of two people learning each other's movements in a confined space. Then they saddled the horses and rode back toward Tahlequah, arriving just as the general store opened for business. The proprietor, a portly white man named Wesley James, greeted Quinn with surprised pleasure. Quinn Garrett, twice in as many days. Are you buying supplies or just gracing us with your presence? Supplies today, Wesley. Miss Ashford here is going to be keeping house for me at the ranch. She needs some practical clothes and whatever household goods she thinks necessary. Wesley's eyes went round with curiosity, but to his credit, he did not voice the obvious questions. Of course. Miss Ashford, you just tell me what you need. Rose moved through the store with careful consideration, selecting 2 sturdy work dresses, a shawl, undergarments, and practical boots. She added basic sewing supplies, extra lamp oil, and various kitchen necessities to the growing pile. Quinn could see her mentally calculating costs, choosing carefully. Get what you need, he said quietly. Do not stint on account of price. This is already too generous, she protested. It is an investment, cannot have my housekeeper working in rags. She gave him a sharp look at the word rags, and too late Quinn remembered his own unbidden thought from the day before. But if she guessed his meaning, she did not say anything. She simply added a few more items to the pile and allowed Wesley to tally the cost. The total made even Quinn wince slightly, but he paid without comment. Rose's expression was carefully neutral as Wesley wrapped the purchases, but Quinn caught a glimpse of relief in her eyes. Whatever circumstances had brought her west with nothing but one dress, they had clearly been desperate. As they loaded the packages onto the horses, a woman's voice called out behind them. Quinn Garrett, hold up there. Quinn turned to find Martha Patterson approaching, her dark hair tucked under a bonnet and her expression stern. The boarding house owner had been a friend of his mother's, and she had appointed herself an unofficial guardian of Quinn's welfare since his parents' deaths. Mrs. Patterson, Quinn said, tipping his hat. This is Miss Rose Ashford. She's going to be keeping house for me out at the ranch. Martha's sharp eyes took in every detail of Rose's appearance, from her worn but clean dress to the way she stood with quiet dignity despite the scrutiny. Is that so? And you came from where, Miss Ashford? Kansas, madam. My uncle passed and I came west looking for employment. And you thought it appropriate to take employment living alone with a bachelor at his ranch. Martha's tone was not quite accusatory, but it carried disapproval. Rose lifted her chin slightly. I thought it appropriate to accept honest work when I had no other prospects. Mr. Garrett has been completely proper in his conduct, and he has provided me with a separate room with a lock. People will talk, Martha warned. Tahlequah may be more accepting than some places, but there are still proprieties to consider. Quinn felt his temper stir. People can talk all they want. I needed help at the ranch. Miss Ashford needed employment, unless you were planning to offer her a position at your boarding house. Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. You know I cannot afford to hire anyone. Then maybe you should let Miss Ashford make her own decisions about her situation. Quinn kept his voice level but firm. My mother would not have judged her for doing what she needed to survive. The mention of Quinn's mother seemed to soften Martha slightly. She sighed and turned her attention back to Rose. You are right, it is not my place to judge, but I do hope, Miss Ashford, that you will visit town regularly. Come to church on Sundays. Let people get to know you properly. It will help with the talk. I would be glad to attend services, Rose said. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Patterson. I understand it comes from a kind place. The gracious response seemed to surprise Martha. She nodded slowly. Well then, welcome to Tahlequah, Miss Ashford. I hope you will find it a good home. As Martha walked away, Quinn let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Sorry about that. Martha means well, but she can be overbearing. She is trying to protect both of us from gossip, Rose said quietly. I appreciate that, even if her method is uncomfortable. And she is right. We should attend church. It would be proper. Quinn had not been to services regularly since his mother died, preferring the solitude of the ranch, but he could see the wisdom in Rose's words. All right then. Sunday services it is. They rode back to the ranch in companionable silence, the midday sun beating down on the prairie. When they arrived, Rose immediately carried her new purchases upstairs while Quinn tended the horses. By the time he came back inside, she had changed into one of her new dresses, a simple brown cotton that fit her properly and made her look both practical and pretty. I am going to start in the kitchen, she announced. It needs the most work. But first, tell me what you usually eat so I can plan proper meals. Whatever does not take too much effort, Quinn admitted. Eggs, bacon, bread when I remember to buy it or have the energy to make it, beans. Occasionally I shoot a rabbit or a turkey. Rose looked appalled. No vegetables. No proper stews or roasts. The garden went to seed 2 years ago. I kept meaning to replant but never got around to it. She shook her head in disapproval that reminded him painfully of his mother. Well, that will change. A man cannot live on bacon and eggs alone. You will be sick before you reach 40. Yes, madam, Quinn said meekly, which earned him a surprised smile. I am not that much older than you, Mr. Garrett. You do not need to call me madam. What should I call you then? Miss Ashford seems awfully formal if we are living under the same roof. She hesitated. My given name is Rose, but it might not be proper, and mine is Quinn. If we are going to worry about every propriety, we will drive ourselves mad. He grinned at her. I figure we can be Rose and Quinn in private and proper titles in public. That seemed fair. After a moment, she returned his smile. That seems fair, Quinn. His name in her voice did something odd to his chest, a little flutter like a bird taking flight. Quinn firmly pushed the feeling aside and headed back outside to work. He had fence to repair and horses to train. He could not spend the day mooning over his housekeeper like a schoolboy with his first crush. But as he worked through the afternoon, Quinn found his thoughts returning to the house, to Rose moving through the rooms bringing order to chaos. He wondered what she was doing, whether she was settling in comfortably, if she regretted her decision to come here. Around 4 o'clock, his stomach reminded him he had not eaten since breakfast, and he used that as an excuse to head back inside. The transformation was remarkable. The main room had been thoroughly cleaned, tack removed to its proper place in the barn, papers sorted into neat stacks, books organized on shelves. The kitchen gleamed, and something savory bubbled in a pot on the stove. Rose stood at the counter cutting vegetables, her sleeves rolled up and a determined expression on her face. It smells amazing, Quinn said from the doorway. She jumped slightly, not having heard him enter. You startled me. I am making stew. It is nothing fancy, but it should be filling. It is more than I have managed in years. Quinn moved closer, watching her efficient movements. Where did you learn to cook like this? My mother taught me before she died. Then I kept house for my father until he passed, and then for my uncle. Rose's voice held a careful flatness when discussing her family. Cooking is just a matter of following basic principles and having the right ingredients. When did you lose your parents? Her knife stilled for just a moment. My mother died when I was 12. A fever. My father died 3 years later. Accident with a plow. I was 15. And you have been keeping house for others since then. Quinn did quick math. That is nearly 10 years of taking care of everyone else. Someone had to do it. Rose resumed chopping with perhaps more force than necessary. My uncle needed help after his wife passed. It made sense for me to go to him. There was something in her tone that suggested it had not been a happy arrangement, but Quinn did not press. Instead, he changed the subject. Do you have other family, siblings? No, I was an only child. My mother had difficulties with the birth. The doctor said she could not have more. Rose swept the vegetables into the pot and wiped her hands on her apron. What about you? Any brothers or sisters? No, same as you. My mother also had a hard time with childbirth. They were grateful to have me at all. Quinn leaned against the counter. It made for a lonely childhood sometimes, but I had the horses. They were always good company. Rose turned to look at him, really look, and he saw understanding in her creek water eyes. We are both alone then. Both the last of our lines. I suppose we are. The words hung between them, acknowledgement of a shared state neither had chosen. Maybe that is why I took to living out here by myself, seemed fitting. And yet you hired me. Rose's lips curved slightly. So perhaps you were not entirely happy being alone. Quinn could not argue with that. Perhaps not. They ate dinner together as the sun set, painting the sky through the windows in brilliant oranges and purples. Rose's stew was rich and hearty, full of tender meat and vegetables cooked to perfection. Quinn ate 3 helpings while Rose watched with visible satisfaction. I take it this meets with your approval, she asked. If you cook like this regularly, I might actually survive to see 50, Quinn said, which made her laugh. The sound startled them both. Rose covered her mouth quickly, as if surprised she had made such a noise. But Quinn found himself grinning, pleased to have drawn that reaction from her. They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Quinn rose before dawn to tend the horses while Rose prepared breakfast. They ate together, then went about their separate work. Quinn trained horses and repaired equipment while Rose transformed the house room by room. She cleaned and organized, mended and improved, bringing life back to spaces that had grown stale with neglect. In the evenings, they shared dinner and conversation. Quinn found himself telling Rose stories about his parents, about growing up straddling 2 cultures, about learning to train horses from his father, while his mother taught him respect for the animal's spirits. Rose spoke less about her own past, but gradually small details emerged. Her mother had been a schoolteacher. Her father had been a farmer with dreams bigger than his means. Her uncle had been demanding and critical, constantly finding fault with her work. He used to say I would never find a husband because I was too particular about things, Rose said one evening, a bitter edge to her voice. Said no man wanted a wife who thought too much. Your uncle sounds like he was an idiot, Quinn replied bluntly. A man should want a wife who thinks. Otherwise he is just looking for an unpaid servant. Rose looked at him with surprise. Not many men would agree with that sentiment. Then not many men are worth the trouble. Quinn pushed his empty plate away. My father used to say my mother was the smartest person he ever met. He valued her opinions on everything from horse breeding to which crops to plant. They were partners. They sound like they were very much in love. They were. Quinn smiled at the memory. Right up until the end. When my father got sick with the fever, my mother nursed him day and night. Then she caught it from him. They died within a week of each other. I used to think it was tragic, but now I wonder if my mother could not bear to live without him. Rose reached across the table and briefly touched his hand, a gesture of comfort that sent unexpected warmth through Quinn's arm. I am sorry you lost them both so close together. It was 5 years ago. The grief is not as sharp now. Quinn turned his hand over, catching her fingers before she could withdraw. "But I think you understand that kind of loss, losing everyone who mattered." "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I understand that." They sat there in the lamplight, hands linked across the table, sharing a moment of connection that felt more intimate than any kiss. Then Rose gently pulled away, standing to clear the dishes. The moment broke, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of attraction neither was quite ready to name. Sunday came, and they rode to town for church services. Rose had altered one of her new dresses with ribbon trim, transforming it into something appropriate for worship. Quinn wore his best shirt and coat, feeling oddly nervous about being seen in public with Rose at his side. The little church was full, a mix of Cherokee families and white settlers. Quinn saw heads turn as they entered, saw the whispers start. But Reverend Michaels greeted them warmly, and Ayanna made a point of sitting with them, her presence an endorsement that helped quell some of the gossip. After services, people introduced themselves to Rose. Most were friendly, curious about the new woman in town. A few of the older ladies were cool, clearly disapproving of the living arrangements. But Rose handled everyone with grace, answering questions politely without revealing too much about herself. Martha Patterson approached as they were preparing to leave. "Miss Ashford, I am having a quilting circle at my home on Wednesday afternoon. I would be pleased if you would join us." It was an olive branch, an invitation into the social world of Tahlequah's women. Rose smiled genuinely. "I would be delighted, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you." As they rode back to the ranch, Quinn glanced at Rose. "You handled that well. The town gossips can be harsh." "I have dealt with worse," Rose said simply. "Besides, Mrs. Patterson's invitation was kind. It will help establish my reputation if I am seen socializing with respectable women." Quinn heard the careful strategy in her words. Rose understood the importance of appearances, of building social acceptance. It spoke to an intelligence and awareness he found increasingly attractive. "You are clever," he said. "Most people would not think that far ahead." "Most people did not arrive in a new town with nothing but one dress and a questionable employment situation," Rose countered. "I have to think ahead. It is how I survive." The words reminded Quinn of how precarious Rose's position truly was. She had no family, no resources, no safety net beyond the job he had given her. If something happened to him, or if he decided to let her go, she would be adrift again with nowhere to turn. The responsibility of that weighed on him. "Rose," he said carefully, "I want you to know that your position here is secure. You do not need to worry about me suddenly deciding to let you go." She looked at him with those creek water eyes, expression unreadable. "I appreciate that, Quinn, but we both know life is unpredictable. My uncle's death taught me that lesson well. I cannot afford to assume anything is permanent." "No, I suppose you cannot." Quinn wished he could offer her more certainty, but she was right. Life in the territories was precarious for everyone. "But for what it is worth, I am grateful you are here. The house feels like a home again." Rose's expression softened. "For what it is worth, I am grateful too. You took a chance on a stranger when you had no reason to trust me. That means more than you know." They reached the ranch as afternoon shadows lengthened across the prairie. Quinn tended the horses while Rose changed out of her church dress. When he came back inside, she had coffee brewing and was slicing bread for a light supper. "Quinn, can I ask you something?" Rose's voice was tentative. "Of course. Why did you really hire me that first day?" "You knew nothing about me except that I had nothing. Most men would have directed me to the church and left it at that." Quinn considered his answer carefully. "Honestly, I looked at you stepping off that wagon in that worn dress, and I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen." You had lost everything, but you still had your dignity. You were not begging or asking for pity. You were looking for work, for a chance to build something. I admired that. He paused, then added more quietly. And maybe I saw something of myself in you. Both of us alone, both trying to make a life work without the people who mattered. It seemed like maybe we could help each other. Rose stood very still, the bread knife forgotten in her hand. That first day when I stepped off the wagon, you looked at me like I was something precious. I thought I had imagined it. You did not imagine it. Quinn's heart hammered in his chest. I thought you looked like you could wear rags and still outshine the stars. The words hung in the air between them, an admission of attraction that changed everything. Rose set down the knife and turned to face him fully. Quinn, I cannot risk my position here by entertaining romantic notions. I need this job. I need the security it provides. I know. Quinn took a step closer. But knowing that does not change how I feel. Does not change that I think about you all the time, that I look forward to our dinners together more than I should, that when I am out working with the horses I find myself wondering what you are doing in the house. Quinn, Rose's voice was pained. This is not wise. Probably not. He took another step, close enough now to see the flecks of gray in her blue eyes, the faint freckles across her nose. But I am not asking you to do anything about it. I am just telling you the truth. You asked why I hired you, and the whole truth is that from the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. Like calling to like. Loneliness recognizing loneliness. Rose lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest. Whether to push him away or feel his heartbeat, Quinn could not tell. I feel it too, she whispered. That recognition. That pull. But I am frightened of it, Quinn. I have nothing. If this goes wrong, I lose everything again. Then we will be careful, Quinn said. We will take our time. But Rose, I need you to know that what I feel is real. This is not a whim or passing attraction. I look at you and I see my future if you would be willing. She looked up at him with tears shining in her eyes. How can you be sure? You have known me for less than a month. How long does it take to recognize home? Quinn cupped her face gently with one hand. My mother used to say that hearts know their match before minds do, that when you meet the person meant for you, it feels like coming home after a long journey. That is how I feel when I look at you, Rose, like I have finally come home. A tear slipped down her cheek. I am so afraid of hoping. Every time I have hoped for something, it has been taken away. I cannot promise nothing will ever go wrong. Life does not work that way. Quinn brushed away her tear with his thumb. But I can promise I will do everything in my power to be worthy of your hope, to be the person you can depend on. Rose closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. This is not appropriate. I am your employee. Then quit. Be my partner instead, my equal. Quinn's heart raced. Stay here not because I pay you, but because you want to, because we are building something together. She opened her eyes, searching his face. You are serious. Dead serious. Quinn realized he was trembling slightly. Rose Ashford, I am standing here asking you to give me a chance. Give us a chance. I will court you properly if you will let me. No expectations, no pressure. Just let me show you how much you mean to me. For a long moment, Rose simply looked at him. Then slowly, deliberately, she rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, full of fear and hope tangled together. Quinn kissed her back gently, his hand still cradling her face, trying to pour everything he felt into that tender connection. When she pulled back, Rose was crying openly. I am terrified. Me too, Quinn admitted, but I would rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. Rose laughed through her tears. That is possibly the most ridiculous romantic sentiment I have ever heard. I never claimed to be a poet. Quinn grinned. I am a horseman. We tend toward the practical. "There is nothing practical about this," Rose said, but she was smiling now. "We are both being completely foolish. Then we will be foolish together." Quinn kissed her forehead. "Now how about we have that supper? And then tomorrow, with your permission, I will start courting you properly. I can bring you flowers and tell you terrible poetry and all the things a man is supposed to do." Rose laughed again, the sound lighter than before. "I would like that, though please no poetry. I do not think either of us would survive the embarrassment." They ate their simple meal in a new atmosphere, the air between them charged with possibility. Everything had changed and nothing had changed. Rose was still in his home, they still shared meals and conversation. But now there was acknowledgement of what lay beneath, the attraction and connection they had been carefully ignoring. That night, lying in bed, Quinn heard Rose moving around in her room upstairs. The sound no longer felt strange. It felt right, like the house was finally complete. He fell asleep with a smile on his face, dreaming of creek water eyes and a future that suddenly seemed full of hope. The next morning, Quinn woke extra early and rode out to a meadow where wildflowers grew in abundance. He picked a bouquet of purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, feeling slightly ridiculous but also determined. When he came back to the house, Rose was making breakfast. Quinn presented the flowers with a theatrical bow that made her laugh. "For you, my lady," he said in an exaggerated formal tone. "They are beautiful." Rose took the bouquet, her expression soft. "No one has ever brought me flowers before." The statement shocked Quinn. "Never, never." Rose found a jar to use as a vase, arranging the flowers carefully. "My father was a practical man who did not believe in such gestures, and my uncle certainly never thought to do anything kind." "Then I will bring you flowers every day," Quinn declared, "until you are sick of them." "I do not think I could ever be sick of them," Rose said quietly. They fell into a new pattern. Quinn continued his work with the horses while Rose managed the house, but now their time together was colored by open affection. Quinn would steal kisses when he came in for meals. Rose would touch his hand as she poured his coffee. They talked long into the evenings, sharing stories and dreams, learning the details of each other's lives. Quinn told Rose about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the tension of existing between two cultures. Rose shared more about her difficult years with her uncle, about the criticism and belittling that had eroded her confidence. With each revelation, they grew closer, building intimacy through shared vulnerability. The Wednesday quilting circle became Rose's weekly escape. She would ride into town and spend the afternoon with Tahlequah's women, returning with news and gossip. The women, initially suspicious, had warmed to Rose's quiet competence and genuine interest in their lives. Even Martha Patterson had become an ally, defending Rose when others questioned her living arrangements. "Mrs. Thompson told me the most interesting thing today," Rose said one evening after returning from town. "Apparently, there is talk of bringing a railroad spur through this area. If it happens, Tahlequah could grow significantly." "A railroad would change everything," Quinn said thoughtfully. "Make it easier to transport horses to market, but it would also bring more people, more development. Not sure how I feel about that." "Change is not always bad," Rose said. "Though I understand the appeal of things staying as they are." October arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color to the oak trees. Quinn and Rose had been together for 2 months, their relationship deepening with each passing day. He had not pressed her for more than kisses and hand-holding, respecting the delicate balance of their situation. But the tension was building, a growing desire for something deeper than what propriety allowed. One Saturday evening, after an especially fine dinner, Quinn worked up his courage. Rose, I need to ask you something. She looked up from her sewing, concern flickering across her features. What is it? Will you marry me? The words tumbled out more bluntly than he had intended. No poetry, no elaborate declaration, just a straightforward question born of certainty and need. Rose's needle stilled. Quinn, I know we have only been courting a short time, he rushed on, but I am sure, more sure than I have been of anything except my love for horses. You are my partner, Rose, my home. I want to make it official, make you truly mine and me truly yours. Will you marry me? Rose set down her sewing with trembling hands. Are you certain? Once we are married, there is no going back. You would be tied to a woman with no family, no connections, nothing to bring to the marriage except herself. You are everything I want, Quinn said firmly. I do not need family connections or a dowry. I need you. Your intelligence and strength and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you have made this house a home again, the way you look at me like I am worth something. Tears welled in Rose's eyes. You are worth everything. Then marry me. Quinn knelt before her chair, taking both her hands in his. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I am worth your faith in me. Let me give you the security and home you deserve. Say yes, Rose, please say yes. She pulled one hand free to touch his face, her expression a mixture of joy and lingering fear. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Quinn, I will marry you. Quinn surged up and kissed her, relief and happiness flooding through him. Rose kissed him back with a passion that matched his own, her hands tangling in his hair. They stayed locked together for long moments, sealing their promise with touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. I will make you happy, Rose. I swear it. You already do, she said. Every single day. They decided on a simple wedding to be held at the church in 2 weeks. Quinn wanted to give Rose time to prepare, to make or buy a proper dress, to invite the people she had come to know in Tahlequah. Rose threw herself into preparations with the same focused energy she brought to all her tasks. The women of the quilting circle rallied around Rose, helping her alter a white dress purchased from the general store. Ayanna offered to prepare food for the reception. Even Martha Patterson softened completely, offering her boarding house dining room for the celebration. Quinn found himself riding into town more frequently than usual, ordering supplies and accepting congratulations from neighbors. Word spread quickly in a small town, and most people seemed genuinely pleased. His mother's relatives, the Cherokee families who had known him since birth, expressed particular happiness that he was finally settling down. Your mother would have loved her, Ayanna told him one afternoon. Rose has her spirit, strong and determined but with a good heart underneath. The comparison pleased Quinn more than he could express. His mother had been the standard against which he judged all women, and knowing Rose would have met with her approval felt like a benediction. The evening before the wedding, Quinn and Rose sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The October air carried a crisp coolness that promised the coming winter. Are you nervous? Quinn asked, holding Rose's hand. Terrified, she admitted. But also more certain than I have ever been about anything. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Quinn squeezed her hand. I feel the same way. Rose leaned her head on his shoulder. Tomorrow I will be Rose Garrett. It still does not seem quite real. Rose Garrett, Quinn repeated, liking the sound of it. My wife. Your wife, Rose echoed softly. I wish my mother could have been here to see this. She always worried I would end up alone. You will never be alone again, Quinn promised. Whatever happens, we face it together. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, neither wanting to break the peaceful moment. Finally, Rose stirred. I should go to bed. Tomorrow will be a long day. Quinn walked her to the stairs, then pulled her close for one last kiss. "Tomorrow night you will not be sleeping in that room alone anymore." Rose blushed but did not look away. "I know, I am nervous about that too." "We will figure it out together," Quinn said gently. "No rush, no pressure, just us learning each other." She kissed him again, soft and sweet. "Thank you for being patient with me, for understanding my fears. Thank you for trusting me despite them." Quinn released her reluctantly. "Now go get some sleep. I will see you at the church." Quinn spent his own wedding morning in a state of nervous energy. He dressed in his best suit, a dark gray wool that his father had worn for special occasions. He polished his boots until they gleamed and attempted to tame his dark hair into something respectable. The church was already filling when he arrived. It seemed like half of Tahlequah had turned out for the wedding. Quinn stood at the altar with Reverend Michaels, his palms sweating and his heart racing. What if Rose changed her mind? What if she realized she could do better than a lonely horseman? Then the door opened and Rose appeared, and every doubt evaporated. She wore a simple white dress with lace at the collar and cuffs, her auburn hair pinned up with small white flowers woven through it. She carried a bouquet of fall wildflowers, and her face glowed with happiness and nervous excitement. As she walked down the aisle toward him, Quinn felt his throat tighten with emotion. She was beautiful, not just physically, though she was certainly that, but beautiful in the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, in the way her eyes found his and stayed there, in the way her smile promised a future full of love and partnership. Martha Patterson walked beside Rose, having volunteered to give away the bride since Rose had no family of her own. When they reached the altar, Martha placed Rose's hand in Quinn's and whispered something that made Rose smile. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Quinn repeated his vows in a voice that shook slightly with emotion, promising to love and cherish Rose for all his days. Rose spoke her own vows clearly, her creek-water eyes never leaving his face. When Reverend Michaels pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed his bride to enthusiastic applause from the congregation. The reception at Martha's boarding house was a joyful chaos of food and music and celebration. Quinn danced with Rose, her hand in his as they moved to a fiddle tune played by one of the Cherokee men. She laughed as he spun her, her face flushed and happy. "Happy?" Quinn asked. "Incredibly," Rose said. "I never imagined I could feel this way." "Neither did I," Quinn admitted. "But here we are." As the afternoon wore into evening, guests began to depart. Ayanna pulled Quinn aside before leaving. "Take care of her. She has been alone too long." "I will," Quinn promised. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she is loved." Finally, as darkness fell, Quinn and Rose rode back to the ranch. Their ranch now, Quinn realized. Their home. Rose was quiet on the ride, and Quinn could sense her nervousness increasing as they approached the house. Inside, Quinn lit the lamps while Rose stood uncertainly in the main room. She was still wearing her wedding dress, looking beautiful and vulnerable in the soft light. "Rose," Quinn said gently, "there is no rush. We have the rest of our lives." She nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "I am just nervous. I have never. I do not really know what to expect." Quinn crossed to her and took her hands. "Neither do I, not really, but I love you and I promise to be gentle. We will learn together at whatever pace you need." Rose looked up at him with trust and love shining in her eyes. "I love you too, Quinn. So much it frightens me sometimes." He kissed her softly. "Then let me show you there is nothing to be frightened of." Quinn led Rose upstairs to his bedroom, their bedroom now. He helped her out of the wedding dress with careful reverence, hanging it safely while she changed into a nightgown. When they came together in the marriage bed, it was with tenderness and patience, Quinn attuned to every reaction. every sign of pleasure or discomfort. He took his time, whispering words of love and reassurance, making sure Rose felt cherished and safe. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Rose's head on Quinn's chest and his arms wrapped around her. "That was not what I expected," Rose said softly. Quinn tensed. "Was it? Did I hurt you?" "No." Rose traced patterns on his chest. "I expected it to be something to endure." But it was not. It was beautiful. Relief flooded through Quinn. "You are beautiful, every part of you." Rose lifted her head to kiss him. "Thank you for being patient with me, for making it special." "Always," Quinn promised. "Every day for the rest of our lives, I want to make you feel special." They fell asleep wrapped in each other, two lonely souls who had found their home in each other's arms. The months that followed were the happiest Quinn had ever known. Waking up with Rose beside him every morning felt like a gift. They fell into an easy partnership, working together to improve the ranch. Rose proved surprisingly knowledgeable about horses, revealing she had helped her father with his small breeding operation before his death. "Why did you not mention this before?" Quinn asked, watching Rose handle a temperamental mare with calm competence. "You hired me as a housekeeper, not a horse handler," Rose said. "I did not want to presume." "Rose, you are my wife, my partner. Nothing is presuming. If you want to work with the horses, I would love to have your help." From that day forward, they worked the ranch together. Rose had an intuitive understanding of the animals that complemented Quinn's training methods. Together, they began producing even better horses, their combined skills creating something greater than either could achieve alone. Winter came to Oklahoma, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Quinn and Rose spent the long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. Rose was teaching Quinn to read Cherokee, working through the syllabary his mother had tried to teach him as a child but which he had never fully mastered. "Your mother would be pleased," Rose said one evening as Quinn successfully read a passage. "You are honoring her legacy." "I wish she could have met you," Quinn said. "She would have loved you." "I wish I could have met her too." Rose closed the book. "But I feel like I know her through you, through the stories you tell and the lessons she taught you." Christmas arrived, and Quinn gave Rose a gift he had been secretly working on for weeks. It was a wooden box he had carved himself, the lid decorated with a design of wild roses and stars. "Quinn, it is beautiful," Rose breathed, running her fingers over the carving. "Open it," he urged. Inside lay a delicate gold locket on a chain. Rose gasped as she lifted it out. "Quinn, this must have cost." "It was my mother's," Quinn interrupted. "The only jewelry she owned. I want you to have it." Tears filled Rose's eyes. "I cannot take your mother's locket. You can and you will." Quinn fastened it around her neck. "You are my family now, Rose. You should have the family heirlooms. Besides, my mother would want you to have it. I am sure of it." Rose touched the locket, then pulled Quinn into a fierce hug. "Thank you. I will treasure it always." "I carved the box because I figured you would want a place to keep small things," Quinn continued. "There is a false bottom too, see?" He showed her how to lift the base, revealing a hidden compartment, for anything especially precious. Rose laughed through her tears. "You thought of everything." "I tried." Quinn kissed her forehead. "I want you to be happy, Rose. That is all I have ever wanted." "I am happy," Rose said. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." Spring came with wildflowers carpeting the prairie and new foals being born in the pastures. Quinn and Rose worked from dawn to dusk, caring for the horses and improving the property. They built a new chicken coop and replanted the garden with vegetables. Rose proved to have a talent for growing things, coaxing impressive yields from the Oklahoma soil. In April, Rose began feeling ill in the mornings. At first, She dismissed it as something she ate, but when it continued for weeks, understanding dawned. She waited to tell Quinn until she was certain, then broke the news one evening after dinner. "I am with child," she said simply, watching his face carefully. Quinn's expression went through shock, disbelief, and then pure joy in rapid succession. "Truly, we are going to have a baby, truly." Rose smiled at his reaction. "I think sometime in early December, if I am calculating correctly." Quinn let out a whoop of excitement and swept Rose into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and demanded to be put down. "We are having a baby. Rose, we are going to be parents. I know." Rose's hand went to her still flat stomach. "I am terrified and thrilled in equal measure." Quinn knelt and pressed his forehead against her stomach. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you always." Rose ran her fingers through his hair, emotion welling up. "You are going to be a wonderful father. I hope so." Quinn looked up at her. "I want to be the kind of father mine was, present and involved and loving." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Rose continued working with the horses until her growing belly made mounting difficult, then focused her energy on preparing for the baby. She sewed tiny clothes and blankets, transforming the small spare room downstairs into a nursery. Quinn built a cradle from oak, carving the same rose and star design he had used on Rose's jewelry box. The women of Tahlequah rallied around Rose again, offering advice and hand-me-down baby items. Ayanna was particularly helpful, sharing Cherokee traditions around childbirth and early parenting. Rose absorbed everything eagerly, determined to be prepared. As summer heat gave way to autumn cool, Rose's belly swelled large. She moved more slowly now, uncomfortable but glowing with maternal contentment. Quinn was protective to the point of being ridiculous, constantly worrying about her doing too much. "I am pregnant, not fragile," Rose would remind him patiently. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "But you are my wife having my baby," Quinn would counter. "That makes it different." In late November, Rose's time came. Quinn rode frantically to town to fetch the midwife, a Cherokee woman named Amma who had delivered half the babies in the territory. Amma arrived calm and prepared, shooing Quinn out of the bedroom with instructions to boil water and stay out of the way. The labor lasted through the night. Quinn paced the main room, wincing every time he heard Rose cry out. He had faced down wild horses and dangerous situations, but nothing terrified him like hearing his wife in pain and being helpless to stop it. Finally, as dawn broke on a cold December morning, the sound of a baby's cry pierced the air. Quinn froze, his heart hammering. Then Amma appeared in the doorway, smiling. "You have a son," she announced. "Strong and healthy. Your wife did well." Quinn pushed past her into the bedroom. Rose lay exhausted against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as Quinn entered, her face radiant despite her exhaustion. "Quinn, meet your son." Quinn approached slowly, almost reverently. Rose pulled back the blanket, revealing a tiny red face with a shock of dark hair. The baby's eyes were closed, but his mouth worked busily, seeking food. "He is perfect," Quinn breathed. "Rose, he is absolutely perfect." "He has your hair," Rose said. "And I think he will have your height, based on how long he is." Quinn sat on the edge of the bed, afraid to touch something so small and precious. Rose guided his hand to the baby's head, encouraging him to stroke the soft hair. "Hello, son," Quinn whispered. "Welcome to the world." The baby made a small noise, and Quinn felt his heart expand in his chest. He had not thought it possible to love something so much so instantly, but looking at his son, at Rose holding their child, he felt overcome with protective love. "What should we name him?" Rose asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Quinn knew exactly what felt right. "Matthew," he said. "Matthew Garrett, after my father." Rose smiled. "Matthew, I like that. Strong and traditional." "Matthew Quinn Garrett," Quinn amended, "if that suits you." "It suits perfectly." Rose shifted the baby in her arms. "Do you want to hold him?" Quinn accepted his son with careful reverence, cradling the small body against his chest. Matthew opened his eyes briefly, revealing cloudy blue that would likely change color as he grew. In that moment, Quinn made a silent vow to be the best father he could be, to give his son everything his own father had given him and more. The first months of Matthew's life were exhausting and joyful in equal measure. Rose recovered from the birth and threw herself into motherhood with her characteristic determination. Quinn helped whenever he could, changing diapers and walking the floor with Matthew when he fussed at night. "You are a natural," Rose said one evening, watching Quinn rock their son to sleep. "I am learning," Quinn replied. "Same as you. But you are not afraid of it the way most men would be. You do not act like caring for your son is beneath you." "Why would I?" Quinn looked at her in confusion. "He is my child. Of course I want to care for him." Rose came over and kissed him softly. "You are a good man, Quinn Garrett, better than you know." As Matthew grew, his personality emerged. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and curious about everything. By 6 months, he was trying to crawl. By 9 months, he was pulling himself up on furniture. Quinn built gates to keep Matthew contained while they worked, but the boy had his father's determination and his mother's intelligence, constantly finding ways to defeat the barriers. "He is going to be trouble," Rose said one afternoon, plucking Matthew from his latest escape attempt. "He is going to be amazing," Quinn countered, taking his son and tossing him gently in the air. Matthew shrieked with laughter, his whole face lighting up. Life settled into a new rhythm. Quinn and Rose managed the ranch while raising their son, building a life rich in love if not material wealth. They were happy in a way neither had dreamed possible during those lonely years before they found each other. Matthew's first birthday came with a small celebration at the ranch. Ayanna and her family came, along with Martha Patterson and several other friends from Tahlequah. They ate cake and watched Matthew smash his first slice enthusiastically into his face. Quinn caught Rose's eye across the room and saw his own contentment reflected there. That night, after everyone had left and Matthew slept peacefully in his cradle, Quinn and Rose stood on the porch looking out at the stars. "Thank you," Rose said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me that day. For looking at a woman in rags and seeing someone worth taking a chance on." Rose leaned against his shoulder. "You changed my life, Quinn. You gave me everything I had lost. A home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving." Quinn wrapped his arm around her. "You gave me just as much, maybe more. I was alive, but I was not living. You brought joy back into my life. You made this house a home again." "I love you," Rose said, "more than words can express." "I love you too." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "And I always will." They stood together in the starlight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from nothing. The future stretched ahead of them, full of promise and possibility. Whatever challenges came, they would face them together, just as they always had. 2 years later, Rose was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, leaving her exhausted and ill for months. Quinn worried constantly, but Rose remained determined to see it through. "We are having this baby," she told him firmly when he suggested maybe one child was enough. "I want Matthew to have siblings. I want a house full of life and laughter." The baby arrived in August of 1887, a daughter with her mother's auburn hair and her father's green eyes. They named her Elizabeth Rose Garrett after Rose's mother. If Matthew had been an easy baby, Elizabeth was a challenge. She fussed and cried, only settling when held. Quinn and Rose took turns walking her through the night, exhausted but devoted. "She has strong opinions," Rose said wryly after a particularly difficult day. "She gets that from her mother," Quinn teased, earning him a swat. But despite the challenges, Elizabeth brought new joy to their lives. Matthew doted on his little sister, bringing her toys and trying to make her smile. As she grew, Elizabeth proved intelligent and stubborn, determined to keep up with her older brother despite being smaller. The years passed in a blur of children and horses, of hard work and simple pleasures. Quinn and Rose built their ranch into something prosperous, their reputation for quality horses spreading throughout the territory. They remained deeply in love, their bond strengthening with each shared challenge and triumph. In 1891, Oklahoma began the transition toward statehood. Changes swept through the territory, some welcome and some not. But Quinn and Rose weathered the shifts, adapting while maintaining the life they had built. Matthew grew into a tall, serious boy with his father's way with horses. Elizabeth was fierce and funny, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1893, Rose gave birth to a third child, another son they named Samuel after Rose's father. Samuel was a quiet, thoughtful boy who preferred books to horses, but loved his family fiercely. By the turn of the century, Quinn was in his mid-40s and Rose in her early 40s. Their children were growing up, Matthew already helping substantially with the ranch work. They had built something lasting, something that would continue after they were gone. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rose took Quinn's hand. "Do you remember that first day? When I stepped off the wagon with nothing but one dress?" "I remember," Quinn said. "I remember thinking you looked brave and beautiful. You told me later I could wear rags and still outshine the stars." Rose smiled. "I thought it was the most ridiculous thing anyone had ever said to me." "Was it true, though?" Quinn asked, grinning. "Maybe." Rose leaned her head on his shoulder. "But I think I only shine because you saw me when I was at my lowest and chose to believe I was worth something. You gave me the chance to become who I was meant to be." "We gave each other that," Quinn corrected. "I was existing, not living. You taught me the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play in the yard. Matthew was teaching Elizabeth to rope, while Samuel sat nearby reading a book. The ranch building stood solid and permanent, testament to years of hard work. Everything they had built together. "I have been thinking," Rose said carefully. "Matthew is nearly 17 now, old enough to start thinking about his own future." "He wants to stay on the ranch," Quinn said. "He told me he wants to take over eventually, expand the operation. And Elizabeth wants to be a teacher. She has been reading everything she can about education." Rose smiled fondly. "Samuel, I think, will be our wanderer. He talks about seeing the world beyond Oklahoma." "They are good children," Quinn said. "We did well." "We did." Rose squeezed his hand. "Thank you for building this life with me, Quinn, for taking a chance on a woman with nothing." "You were never nothing," Quinn said firmly. "You were everything I needed. Everything I did not know I was looking for." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Quinn reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A wagon arriving on a dusty street, a woman in a worn dress stepping down with quiet dignity. A moment of recognition, soul calling to soul across the space between them. He had offered her a job, but she had given him a life. He had provided shelter, but she had created a home. Together, they had built something remarkable from the ashes of their separate loneliness. Matthew called from the yard, asking for help with something. Elizabeth laughed at whatever Samuel had read from his book. The sounds of family, of life, of love, Quinn stood, pulling Rose up with him. "Come on, Mrs. Garrett. Our children need us." Rose smiled, that same smile that had first captured his heart all those years ago. "Lead the way, Mr. Garrett." They walked hand in hand toward their children, toward the life they had created together. Behind them, the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, brilliant and eternal. And among all those celestial lights, none shone brighter than the love Quinn Garrett held for his wife, the woman who had arrived with nothing but one dress and given him everything that mattered. The years continued to unfold with the steady rhythm of ranch life. Matthew turned 18 and asked to court Emily, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Quinn and Rose gave their blessing, watching with fond nostalgia as their son experienced the fumbling uncertainty of first love. When Matthew and Emily married 2 years later, it was at the same church where Quinn and Rose had spoken their own vows. "We are getting old," Rose said, watching Matthew dance with his new bride. "Speak for yourself," Quinn protested. "I am in my prime." Rose laughed and poked his slightly rounded middle. "Your prime is showing around the edges." They built a small house for Matthew and Emily on the ranch property, keeping the family close while giving the young couple privacy. Emily proved to be a good match for Matthew, steady and practical with a love for horses that rivaled his own. Within a year, Rose and Quinn became grandparents to a baby girl named Clara. "A granddaughter," Quinn marveled, holding the tiny infant with the same awe he had felt holding his own children. "I am a grandfather." "And I am a grandmother," Rose said, though she was only in her mid-40s. It seems impossible, but the joy of grandchildren was undeniable. Clara was followed by 2 brothers, and Matthew's family grew as he took over more of the ranch operations. Quinn gradually stepped back, content to advise rather than direct. He had built something lasting, and watching his son continue that work brought deep satisfaction. Elizabeth pursued her dream of teaching, attending the new normal school in Tahlequah and returning to teach at the local elementary school. She had inherited both her mother's intelligence and her father's stubbornness, becoming a fierce advocate for her students. She remained unmarried, declaring she was too busy shaping young minds to worry about romance, though Quinn suspected several young men in town disagreed with her priorities. Samuel, true to prediction, left Oklahoma at age 20. He wrote letters from San Francisco, from Portland, from Seattle, describing his adventures. Each letter was treasured, read and reread until the pages wore soft. He returned for visits occasionally, bringing stories and gifts from far-off places. Though his path differed from his siblings, he remained deeply connected to his family and the ranch where he grew up. In 1910, Quinn and Rose celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. Nearly 100 people attended, testament to the friendships they had built over the decades. Their children were there, along with 5 grandchildren and countless friends and neighbors. Ayanna gave a speech, telling the assembled crowd about the day Quinn had brought Rose to the restaurant, how obvious it had been even then that something special was forming. "Some people search their whole lives for what these 2 found in an afternoon," she said. "They remind us all that love is not just about grand gestures, but about showing up for each other every single day." That night, after everyone had left, Quinn and Rose walked down to the creek that bordered their property. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water. They sat on the bank, shoulders touching, listening to the nighttime chorus of frogs and insects. 25 years, Rose said softly. "Half my lifetime. The better half, I hope," Quinn said. "Definitely the better half." Rose leaned her head on his shoulder. "I still remember that first day. How terrified I was, how certain everything would fall apart, I could not imagine a future beyond just surviving to the next day. And now I cannot imagine life without you, without our children and grandchildren, without this place we built together." Rose took his hand. "You kept your promise, Quinn. You made me feel cherished every day." "It was not hard," Quinn said honestly. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done." They sat in silence for a while, watching moonlight dance on the water. Then Rose spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder about fate? About how we ended up finding each other?" "Sometimes," Quinn admitted. "If the wagon had arrived a day earlier or later, if you had gone to a different town, if I had not been shoeing that mare right when you stepped down, so many small things had to align perfectly. My uncle used to say there was no such thing as fate, that life was just random chance," Rose said. "But I cannot believe that. There was something meant about us finding each other." "Maybe it was not fate," Quinn suggested. "Maybe it was just two people brave enough to take a chance when it was offered. You chose to trust me when you had every reason to be cautious. I chose to offer you help when it would have been easier to walk away." Rose nodded slowly. "So we made our own fate through our choices." "Something like that." Quinn kissed her temple. "However it happened, I am grateful for it every day." As they aged, Quinn and Rose settled more deeply into their roles as the family matriarchs and patriarchs. Their house became the center of family gatherings, the place where everyone returned for holidays and celebrations. Rose's kitchen was always full of grandchildren begging for cookies and stories. Quinn's barn was where the grandchildren learned to ride, just as their parents had before them. In 1916, as America edged toward entering the Great War, Samuel surprised everyone by returning home with a wife. Sarah was a quiet, artistic woman from Seattle with a love of the natural world. She and Samuel built a small cabin on the far end of the ranch property where she painted landscapes and he wrote about his travels. "Our whole family back together," Rose said happily. "All our children here." It did not last forever. Matthew eventually took over the ranch completely, expanding it as he had dreamed. Elizabeth continued teaching, becoming principal of her school. Samuel and Sarah eventually moved to Santa Fe, where Sarah's paintings found an appreciative audience. But they all returned regularly, maintaining the connections forged in childhood. Quinn and Rose grew old together with grace and humor. Quinn's dark hair turned silver, and Rose's auburn faded to a soft gray. Lines deepened on both their faces, maps of lives fully lived. But their love never wavered, never diminished. If anything, it grew deeper with time, seasoned by shared experiences and unwavering commitment. On their 40th anniversary in 1925, their entire family gathered at the ranch. Matthew's children had children of their own now, and the house overflowed with 4 generations of Garretts. Quinn looked around at the crowd of people who existed because he and Rose had found each other 40 years before and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Rose asked, appearing at his elbow. "I am thinking about a wagon arriving in Tahlequah carrying a woman with one dress," Quinn said, "and how that moment changed everything." Rose slipped her hand into his, the gesture as natural as breathing after 40 years of marriage. "I am thinking about a cowboy who looked at me like I mattered, who saw past the worn dress and the desperation to the person underneath." "You always mattered," Quinn said. "From that very first moment you mattered." They stood together watching their family, the legacy of their love spreading out before them in a room full of laughter and life. Children chased each other through the house while adults talked and shared stories. The ranch Quinn's father had built and Quinn had maintained now belonged to the next generation, ensuring continuity into an uncertain future. That night, lying in the bed they had shared for 4 decades. Rose turned to Quinn. "Do you have any regrets?" Quinn considered the question seriously. "I regret that my parents did not live to see our children. I regret every moment I spent being stubborn or short-tempered with you. I regret not telling you often enough how much you mean to me." "You tell me constantly," Rose said, "through your actions if not always your words." "Then no," Quinn said. "I have no real regrets. None." Rose's voice was firm. "Even the hard times were worth it because we faced them together. I would not change a single thing." Quinn pulled her close, marveling that after 40 years, holding Rose still felt like coming home. "I love you, Rose Garrett, today, tomorrow, and every day after that." "I love you too," Rose whispered. "Always." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two people who had beaten the odds and built something beautiful. Outside, the Oklahoma prairie stretched endlessly under a canopy of stars, the same stars that had witnessed a cowboy looking at a woman in a worn dress and recognizing his future. The years grew gentler for Quinn and Rose, their days measured in small pleasures rather than ambitious goals. They spent mornings on the porch with coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky. Afternoons were for visiting with family or tending Rose's beloved garden. Evenings brought quiet conversation and comfortable silence, the easy intimacy of two people who knew each other completely. Quinn's health began to decline in his mid-70s, his joints stiffening with age and his heart growing weaker. Rose nursed him with the same fierce devotion she had brought to everything in her life, refusing to let him give up. But they both knew time was finite, that their story must eventually end. One summer evening in 1938, Quinn and Rose sat on their porch watching a spectacular sunset. Quinn felt unusually tired, his chest tight and breathing labored. But Rose was beside him, her hand in his, and that made everything bearable. "You remember the first sunset we watched together?" Rose asked. "That very first day when you brought me here to see the ranch." "I remember," Quinn said. "I was terrified you would not like it, that you would refuse the job and I would never see you again." "I was terrified too," Rose admitted, "but I was also drawn to you in a way I did not understand. Something about you felt safe." Quinn squeezed her hand. "You were safe. You always were." "I would have died before letting anything happen to you. I know." Rose turned to look at him, her still beautiful eyes soft with love. "You kept me safe in every way that mattered, not just physically but emotionally. You gave me a place where I could finally stop running, stop fighting. You gave me permission to just be happy." "You did the same for me," Quinn said. "I was drowning in loneliness before you arrived, going through the motions but not really living. You taught me how to live again." They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple and pink. Quinn felt the tightness in his chest increase, but he ignored it. This moment was too precious to interrupt. "Rose," he said quietly, "if I could go back to that day, to the moment you stepped off the wagon, I would not change a single thing. Every day with you has been a gift." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "Quinn, I mean it." Quinn lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her fingers gently. "You were everything I did not know I needed. My partner, my love, my home. Whatever time we have left, whether it is years or days or hours, I want you to know you made my life complete." "You made mine complete too," Rose said, tears streaming down her face now. "I love you so much, Quinn Garrett. More than I have words to express." "I know." Quinn smiled, the same smile that had first charmed Rose all those decades ago. "And I love you, today, tomorrow, and whatever comes after. Nothing will ever change that." They watched the last light fade from the sky, stars beginning to emerge in the darkness. Quinn felt his breath growing shorter, his vision starting to blur. But Rose was beside him, solid and real, and that was all that mattered. "Rose," he whispered, "thank you for saying yes all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely horseman. Thank you for seeing me," Rose said, holding his hand tightly, "for looking past the rags and seeing the stars." Quinn's last thought as his eyes closed was of creek water eyes and auburn hair catching sunlight, of a woman stepping off a wagon with nothing but dignity and hope, of finding home in the most unexpected place. Rose felt the moment Quinn left her, felt the hand in hers go slack and the breath stop. She held him close, tears flowing freely, grieving the loss even as she celebrated the gift of 55 years together. They had built something beautiful, something that would last long after they were both gone. Matthew found them at dawn, his mother still holding his father's hand, refusing to let go even in death. He helped Rose into the house, called for the doctor, began the process of saying goodbye. The entire family gathered, mourning the passing of the man who had built their legacy. But even in grief, there was celebration of a life fully lived and a love that had endured every challenge. Quinn Garrett had been a good man, a devoted husband and father, a talented horseman, and a pillar of his community. He had taken a chance on a stranger and built a dynasty. They buried Quinn on the ranch property, under an oak tree overlooking the prairie he had loved. The entire county attended the funeral, testament to the impact he had made. Rose stood at the graveside with her children and grandchildren surrounding her, drawing strength from the family Quinn had given her. After the funeral, Rose moved into Matthew's house, unable to bear living in the home she had shared with Quinn. But every day she walked to the oak tree and sat beside Quinn's grave, talking to him about the family, about the ranch, about life continuing without him. She lived another 6 years, surrounded by love and family. In that time, she saw her first great-great-grandchild, a little girl named Rose who had her namesake's auburn hair. She saw Elizabeth finally marry at age 60, finding love with a widowed professor. She saw Samuel published, his memoirs of traveling the West becoming a modest bestseller. When Rose passed peacefully in her sleep in 1944, she was laid to rest beside Quinn under the oak tree. Their shared headstone bore a simple inscription: "Together, they found home." The ranch continued through Matthew's line, each generation adding their own stamp while maintaining the foundation Quinn and Rose had built. The house remained the center of family gatherings, full of children and laughter and love. The legacy of two lonely people who had found each other against all odds lived on, proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a chance on hope. And on clear summer evenings, when the sunset painted the Oklahoma sky in brilliant colors and the stars began to emerge, those who walked the ranch land sometimes felt a presence. Two souls intertwined, watching over the family they had created, still together in whatever came after. Still home in each other, just as they always had been. The story of Quinn and Rose became family legend, told and retold with each generation. Children asked to hear about the day their great-great-grandmother arrived with just one dress, about the cowboy who saw past appearances to the person underneath. The wooden box Quinn had carved for Rose was passed down as a treasured heirloom, still containing the locket that had belonged to Quinn's mother. As decades passed, and Oklahoma changed from territory to state to modern times, the ranch remained. It stood as testament to the power of love and partnership, to two people brave enough to choose hope over fear. Quinn and Rose's story reminded each new generation that sometimes the most extraordinary lives begin with the simplest choices. To be kind, to take a chance, to see the value in someone everyone else overlooks. They had built something that lasted, something that mattered. Not through wealth or fame, but through love and dedication, and the quiet determination to make each day matter. They had looked at each other across a dusty street in Tahlequah and recognized home. And for 55 years, they had kept that promise, building a life rich in all the ways that truly counted. Their love story became the foundation upon which generations were built, proof that the right person at the right time can change everything. That a woman with nothing but one dress can become the center of a legacy. That a lonely cowboy can find his purpose in loving someone well. And on those clear summer evenings, when the stars shone bright over the Oklahoma prairie and the wind whispered through the grass, you could almost hear it, the echo of a promise made long ago. You could wear rags and still outshine the stars. Words spoken in a moment of recognition that became a lifetime of devotion. A testament to the transformative power of love that sees, truly sees, the person underneath everything else. The wagon had brought her with just one dress. But she left behind a dynasty, a story, and a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things cannot be measured in material possessions. Sometimes, all you need is someone who looks at you and sees not what you have lost, but what you can become together. Someone who offers not just shelter, but home. Someone who proves through daily devotion that love, real love, is about seeing the stars in someone even when they are wearing rags. That was the legacy of Quinn and Rose Garrett. That was the story that lived on long after they were gone. A love story set in the Wild West, where two lonely souls found each other and built something eternal from nothing but hope and determination, and the courage to say yes when life offered them a chance at happiness. Their story ended, but the love continued, woven into the fabric of the family they created, embedded in the very soil of the ranch they built. Proof that some things, the most important things, truly do last forever.